From the Home Slice News Center, this is the Daily Slice for Friday, November 11th, 2022. I'm D. Ray Knight. This is what's going on. The group responsible for putting the latest marijuana issue on the ballot says they're not going anywhere. Matthew Schweik with South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws says they faced an uphill battle, with midterm voter turnouts generally smaller and more conservative. His group led the charge for initiated Measure 27, which failed at the polls on Tuesday. It would have legalized recreational use of marijuana for those 21 and older. Schweik adds that trying to decriminalize marijuana while there's a heightened concern nationwide about crime was a challenge. 2 area women have been sentenced to federal prison. Amy Rose has the details.
2 women have been sentenced to federal prison for illegal drug activities. 33-year-old Amber Ashland of Rapid City received 17 years. That will be followed by 5 years of supervised release. A federal grand jury indicted Ashland in January for conspiring with others to distribute pounds of methamphetamine in the Rapid City area. She pleaded guilty in June. 29-year-old Alexandria Warner of Box Elder was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. That will be followed by 5 years of supervised release.
Just in time for Veterans Day, more than 100 soldiers from the National Guard in Rapid City will be welcomed back on Sunday. The ceremony for the 109 soldiers of the South Dakota Army National Guard's 235th Military Police Company will be at the Monument Theater in Rapid City. The soldiers served on a 10-month deployment to Cuba, where the unit has been providing detention operation support to Joint Task Force Guantanamo. The unit arrived in the U.S. on October 30th and has been completing demobilization requirements at Fort Bliss, Texas, before returning home. In national and international news, control of both the House and Senate remains undecided. The outcomes of decisive races depends on ballots that have not yet been counted, partly because some states accept mail ballots after Tuesday, as long as they were postmarked before the polls closed. On the Senate side, Democrats are increasingly optimistic that they will keep control based on the counting in Arizona and Nevada. If 2 of their incumbent Senate candidates, Mark Kelly in Arizona and Catherine Cortez Masto in Nevada, win re-election, Democrats would have a majority regardless of the results of a runoff in Georgia next month. On the House side, the picture looks better for Republicans. Democrats have only the narrowest of paths to maintain control. Still, while a Republican majority is most likely outcome, that majority would almost certainly be small. President Biden is jetting off on a round-the-world trip. Amy Rose has the story.
President Joe Biden is heading to a global climate meeting with a giant domestic investment in tow. Biden is likely to face questions about how far the U.S. will go to pull other large greenhouse gas emitters along. The Democratic president's attendance Friday at the UN Climate Conference in Egypt is the first stop on an around-the-world trip that also takes him to a meeting of Southeast Asian leaders in Cambodia and a Group of 20 summit meeting in Indonesia. Biden will discuss a new rule cracking down on methane emissions. Biden left the U.S. buoyed by Democrats, stronger than expected, showing in Tuesday's elections and earlier congressional passage of the largest climate investment in U.S. history.
Now the latest on the war in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry says it has finished pulling out its troops from the western bank of the Dnieper River in Ukraine's southern Kherson region. In a statement carried by Russia's state news agencies, the ministry said the withdrawal was completed at 5 a.m. on Friday, and not a single unit of military equipment was left behind. The retreat announced earlier this week marks another setback for Moscow's war in Ukraine. Areas the Russian military withdrew from include the city of Kherson, the only regional capital Moscow seized during its 8.5-month invasion of Ukraine. A Kremlin spokesman on Friday refused to acknowledge the retreat as a humiliation for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Your weather forecast from the Home Slice Weather Center. Sunny with a high of 29 today, low tonight 10. Tomorrow, sunny and 36. Sunday, high around 32. And that was your Daily Slice for Friday, November 11th, 2022. The Daily Slice is a production of Home Slice Media Group, hosted by D. Ray Knight with Amy Rose. Executive producer Mark Houston. Engineered by Chris Jacquez. I'm D. Ray Knight. Happy Veterans Day.